age of 13, Chantal Petitclerc lost her legs in a tragic accident. With the help of her high school physical education teacher, she eventually took up swimming and wheelchair athletics, which in turn led to a long, successful career as a Paralympic athlete, eventually competing in the 2008 Beijing Paralympic Games. After competing in Beijing, Chantal had a total of 21 Paralympic medals, including 4 gold, making her the most celebrated female track athlete in history, the most medaled Canadian Paralympic athlete, as well as the only Canadian athlete to have won gold medals at the Olympics, Paralympics, and Commonwealth Games. Chantal is now a highly sought-after speaker and shares her story with dozens of groups each year in hopes of inspiring others to reach their full potential. Can you share a little bit about what happened to you when you were a teenager?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was not born with a disability, but I had an accident at the age of 13. So we were, I'm from a very small town, and we were visiting some friends of the family who had a farm. The farm was abandoned and broken down, but and of course the parents told us not to go there, but being 13, we just decided to go there anyways, which was not the greatest idea. And basically a barn door that was underground, broken, we lifted it to play some games, and it fell back on me. And so that's how I broke my spinal cord. And that is how I became paraplegic at the age of 13. And I mean, obviously it did change my life. But lucky for me, I bounced back quite quickly after.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're doing amazing things. Done amazing things. So did you know that you always wanted to get into or do some type of sports prior to your accident, or was it your accident that, or spinal cord injury, that kind of was like, oh, maybe I should go, do something in sports if, the parent, being interested?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because I was a quiet child. And the thing is, I was into sport, but no more than any other kid. And coming from a small town, there was not a lot of organized sports. So I didn't know that I was passionate about it until I had my accident. And this is when my phys ed teacher came to me, and this was beginning of the 80s, was still the time when schools in Canada, anyway, they weren't quite sure what to do with students with a disability during phys ed classes, and they didn't have the proper tools, I suppose. But this Gaston Jacques, my phys ed teacher, good on him, he came to me and said, "No, we need to do something. You need to stay active and healthy. And why do we not try to swim during lunchtime and see how that works?" And so this really is how sport came into my life. I was not an athlete before that. I'm not from an athletic family. I did not know I had it in me. So I always find it interesting, and I always remind myself that it's worth trying new things, because the reality is I was born for it. I was built for it as well. I had such potential, like physical potential as an athlete, and I could have missed it. So to me, it's always a good reminder of not being afraid of trying new things, because you never know, maybe you're good at it and you don't even know it.
Right. No, absolutely. And so what was it like for you to win 21 medals in the Paralympic Games? I mean, that's such a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. But what was that feeling like? I mean, 21 is quite remarkable.
Well, it was an amazing journey, because I was representing Canada in 5 Paralympic Games, and of course, traveling all around the world for 20 years, which I really, really feel privileged, and I enjoyed that so much. And winning the 21 medals, it really was a journey of pushing my limits, reaching to has reaching to my full potential as an athlete, but also it was a journey of getting to know myself, my strength, my weaknesses. And so it's very interesting because you learn so much when you have those big dreams and those big challenges. And so when I decided, especially my last games, and being at the top and being the favorite and the pressure that it represents, and saying, okay, I'm going in and I want to win 5 gold medals. It's interesting because it is at the same time, it has been the toughest challenge of my career, but the greatest time. And so I find it interesting how you can mingle having the hard work and the pressure and the dedication and discipline, but also having the most, passionate adventure while doing it. And I always keep that as the measure of my success, more than the medals, is that, but every game, every medal has a story, and it's been amazing. I have to say, I always think fondly about that time of my life, because you're in it, and it's such also an amazing lifestyle if you enjoy it, because you train, you travel, you're with friends, sharing the same passions. So I really cherish that part of my life.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So who or what has been an inspiration to you?
It is a tricky question, because I don't have like one role model. I don't have one person, but I've been privileged to have a lot of mentors and friends, or even role models in the sense of popular athletes that you admire from a distance. But I think my way of being inspired is really more a little bit like a sponge, is trying to absorb the good in people, and trying to say, oh, I want to improve a little bit of that. I want to go there. I want to do this. So I could not have, just one person or one name. For you, of course, I was talking about the phys ed teacher who got me swimming, which later turned into wheelchair racing. And so, of course, he had a very, very important part to play in my life. Later on, I was chasing legends in my own sport and trying to beat their records. So there were a lot of people that I admired and looked up to. And one of the things that I do quite a bit, and I think it helped me and still does, is if someone is inspiring me, or someone, I want to know how they do this, like I never hesitate to reach out. Like I did it as an athlete, sitting down with other Paralympians and asking them for tips and knowledge. And we are interviewing from the US, and Scott Hollenbeck, for example, is a great Paralympian, and he was a good friend of mine. And I never really had an ego in saying, okay, you've got to tell me how this works. How do we do that? What do you think? And I think people should do a little more of that, because they would find out how people are generous. If you're just asking for, and even with my new life as a parliamentarian, I never hesitate to say, okay, how do you hold a proper meeting? How do you do that? And so I think I think we shouldn't be shy in asking for help and mentorship.
I would totally agree. And I think, unfortunately, there's so many people in this world who don't do that. And it's a shame, because, asking for help and having mentorship is really what's going to propel somebody, especially with a difference. And there's so many like resources, and there's so many people that, to look up to. So I would agree. So you're a very unique person. You're a mom, you're a person with a difference, a senator, and you've spoken in front of massive groups of people. How has that position help you have a voice for people with disabilities and the barriers that they face, whether it be employment, discrimination, and accessibility issues?
I think my role as a person with a disability and as someone who will kind of be advocacy role has changed a lot, because when I was an athlete, I was not on a mission to change the world. I was there because I wanted to be good. I wanted to be fast. I wanted to win medals. But even with that, the side effect of winning those medals, being on TV, it really changed how people see persons with a difference. And so I did have some impact, even if it was not my primary goal. It wasn't my goal at all, to be honest, but it did happen. And kids and individuals talking to you and seeing what you can do, what you cannot do. And so it does have an impact. So sometimes I think advocacy comes just by doing what you want and doing it with your difference and being your best. And so it's not about always being, politically involved or strongly voicing specific concerns. But that being said, now that I am a member of parliament in Canada, that role has changed, because now it's not only about living a passion in a wheelchair, but it's about being the voice for persons with disability, persons with a difference. It's about knowing what the struggles are and what the rights should be and are and should be defended. So it is a little more, a lot more articulate and a lot more, I think, maybe, I wanted to say aggressive, but aggressive in a good way. I want to make a difference, because being a parliamentarian has made me realize that there are still a lot of barriers, still a lot of ableism, and that it is important, and my work is in the legislative side of things, and it is important that we fight those fights. And I guess one of the change, for the longest time when I was an athlete, I thought that the things will change because it's the right thing, because people will evolve and they will, and I still think it's true that, we can have that impact just by being there, by doing what we do the best that we do it. But I also think that sometimes legislation is important. You need to you need to fight for your right. You need to make sure that those businesses, if they open, well, they have access, and they have to have it. So I do believe in the value of having some legislation, some regulation, because just waiting for the right people and the good people to go do the good thing, sometimes it works, but sometimes it takes forever, and sometimes it doesn't work. So I think it has to be a combination of all of that. But I've come to the point where I'm being a bit of a stronger advocate in making things mandatory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, your inspiration to others is really, like I said, providing more accessibility and more inclusion and spreading awareness. And, the hope is that, in X number of years, including me and, just across the world, inclusion and accessibility barriers and, discrimination and all of that, will balance itself out. Because I do think there's a lot of work that needs to be done So Can you tell us what the call was like when you were approached by the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and how he wanted to appoint you as Senator of Canada? Like, what were your first thoughts when you got this phone call?
It was a very interesting moment because I was at this time of my life. I had retired from sport. I had been coaching a little bit with the UK team. I was chef de mission for Team Canada going into Rio. So, and I did a little bit of media and keynote speaking. So I was a bit at that space where I'm like, okay, what's next for me? What can I do? Where can I have an impact? And there was at the same time this move in Canada to have a more independent, less partisan Senate. So to modernize the Canadian Senate into something that was less political and more value-based legislation and oriented. So I get this phone call. I remember it was 5:00 in the evening, and I remember because the nanny had just gone, and I was alone with my 2-3-year-old at the time. And the phone rang, and I answered, and he's like, "Oh, Chantal Petitclerc, this is Justin Trudeau, who I had met in the past, and he said, and we're going forward with this independent, less partisan Senate, and we're thinking you could make a contribution." And I was like, okay. So I thought about it for a few days, and I asked, of course, questions, because like many individuals and people, and I was going to say Canadian, but I think it's pretty universal. We don't necessarily know what they do in the Senate. Like we see clips on TV, but we don't know all that much. So I wanted to know exactly first what the job description was, but also more specifically, I really wanted to know what is it that I can bring with who I am, with my competence, my background, as an athlete, as a wellness advocate, as a person with a disability. And so I had the good advices that yes, I could make a difference with what I was bringing to the table. And so I said yes, and I embarked, and it was a very, very steep learning curve, because I was not a lawyer or a politician. So it was a very, very difficult learning curve. But 5 years down the road, I'm quite proud of where the Senate is going and of what I'm bringing to that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, can you get a little bit more in depth about the work that you do?
The Senate of Canada is it's a little more similar than the British Senate as compared to the American Senate. So it's a bit different. And basically, we are legislator. We have also committee we sit in. So the process of a bill in Canada will go through the House of Commons, where it will be going through, first reading, second reading, committee studies, voted in the House of Commons, and then it comes to the Senate for a sober second thought. So we scrutinize those bills, we study them, we amend them, and then we return them back to the House of Commons. So it is very interesting, because it's all about details. It's about it's about improving a bill that can be improved. And also it's about, because we are nonpartisan, I don't belong to a political party. So it's about representing Canadians and not representing a party's interest or platform. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a very interesting change in the Senate, because it allows, and we can see it in the last few years, where the Senate proposes some very important amendments to legislations in Canada, including 2 years ago, we had the Bill C-81 on inclusion of Canada, so universal inclusion and for persons with disability. And to be honest, it was the first time we had this big a bill. I know in the US, you have the Disability Act, and we did not have something like that. So it was huge. And there were many amendments to that bill from the Senate and from myself and from others that now are part of this legislation. And so I think it is very interesting, this work that we do. We also do in the Senate of Canada some very in-depth studies in different committees. I, for example, chaired the Committee on Social Affairs, Science, and Technology. We've been doing some very in-depth studies on different topics. And then what we do is recommendation to the government. And of course, we then push for these recommendations to be adopted. So it is a lot of work. It is very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and anything that's good work is always a lot of work. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. I think our audience is really gonna enjoy listening to all that you do. So what do you think some of the similarities are between politics and sports? Because there can be so many politics around sports, especially with Paralympic athletes. And then, so what do you think, are some of the similarities?
Well, I think, sport and politics it comes across as something very different, of course, unless you're speaking about politics that refer to sport.
Right.
But in general, it's very different. But what I would say to that is that when you are an athlete and you retire, you always have this big question on how can I transfer my knowledge, my experience, everything I've learned through sport, how I can transfer that into this next job, this next work, and in my case, politics. And what I would want to say is that, coping under pressure certainly is one of them. Setting goals, being able to analyze what's coming, being able to have a clear path and a clear strategy to take you where you want to go. I think this is something that I learned through sport and that I really transfer in my new role. So, but apart from that, it's very difficult. And unless I go with big general, we're all passionate, but we're passionate. If you're passionate, you'll be passionate in anything that you do. So it is difficult. I would say that, well, of course, there is politics in sport as well, but I will say that sometimes I miss the fact that in sport, when you perform, you show up, you give it all out, and you see what happens. Do you win, do you lose, or in the middle? Sometimes in politics, I find that it takes longer. Some people will try to block something that you're trying to move forward for political reason. And I find that to be very frustrating. I prefer the more straightforward way of the athletes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just interesting. Sports is, it's great. But just to see kind of the crossover, it's just it's really interesting because I don't think people necessarily understand that there's a crossover. And I think it's important to recognize when obviously you can. So how was it like to be named the first Canadian with a difference to be awarded the Lou Marsh Memorial Trophy as Canada's top athlete of the year?
Yeah, receiving the Lou Marsh was amazing because in Canada, it is the highest recognition you can have as an athlete. And not only that, it is voted by the sport community, the journalists. So the sport community vote for those finalists and those athletes. And it is men and women, amateur and professional, Olympic and Paralympic all together. So to win that, and you know how professional sports are, they take a lot of room, of course, and hockey in Canada. And so to win that was very groundbreaking. And to know that it is the sport community, the journalists that they know the sports, they know what you do, they know the depth of the sport, they know how difficult it is or not to get a medal. So it really adds value for me because it comes from a group of experts who decided that on that year I was, the best sport personality. So it was a very, very moving moment, and I still am very proud of that.
That's great. Oh, for sure. And so how are you planning and preparing for Tokyo 2021?
Well, I'm not going to Tokyo.
You're not? Okay.
Well, I might, if I go, I might go in a role of journalist, right?
Okay.
But I'm not competing.
Okay.
So I might go there because I was part of different games and different.
Right. Yeah.
But now with Tokyo being limited group, to be honest, I'm not sure I would want to go to Tokyo.
No. I know. I didn't know if you were going, even as.
No. I just, I think one of the things I want to say is that I really feel for the athletes getting ready for Tokyo, because this experience will be very different with the different health measures and the security and the bubbles that they will need to keep. And so it's not going to be, but at the same time, I understand that athletes are preparing. So they want to compete no matter what. But unfortunately, it's going to be a different Paralympic experience because of all the different measures that will need to be in place in Tokyo. So I do hope that those games happen and that our athletes are safe and that they can enjoy the experience.
Absolutely. So what do you envision for Canada's Paralympic Games in the future, if you have any visions?
Well, Canada's, the team is doing well. They're doing well. They're preparing. Everybody's been very, very resilient and adapting to making sure that they kept the training going last year and this year through the pandemic. So I think everybody is anxious to be competing and ready to compete. So it will be very interesting because it's going to be, it's difficult to measure depending on the sport, depending also on the different country who was able to continue training and not. New Zealand from the beginning, for example, they've done such a great job in controlling that pandemic that really sport continued, right? So, which really is not the case in Canada. So it will be, I think, I'm hoping that the sport community and the journalists will be understanding, and not just in Canada, but everywhere in the world, because not every athlete have the same facility to train or capacity, depending on the country, depending on the level of the pandemic and that kind of thing. So I'm just hoping that we will keep that in mind when we analyze performances, because maybe someone who really, really was meant to win a gold medal is not going to win a gold medal because of so many out of their control situation. But maybe they will win it. We don't know. But I'm just hoping that we will be gentle.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. And so for people that may not know, what is the accessibility like at these games? Obviously, they're in different places and all the time, every 4 years, every 2 years. I never know how they all go with the years, but I just get confused. But what is the accessibility like? Because it's totally different, in each place. So how do they, whoever, the Paralympic like committees, how do they make everything to be accessible?
I think, the Paralympic movement, one of the legacy of the Paralympic Games and Village and is really about opening minds and awareness to what is good accessibility standards. And ever since the beginning, it has evolved, of course. But now, bidding for a Paralympic game as a country, it does come with a responsibility to make your village and facilities fully accessible for all types of differences. And this is amazing, and this is huge. So, and I think what it does also is that when the games are over, well, this remains at least for that part of the country, and hopefully it goes beyond. But Paralympic village and facilities, it's fully accessible. It's fully signaled as well for different types of disabilities. And one of the things that they try to do is really to promote that kind of awareness through the country. What it does also sometimes, I remember Rio, for example, because of the games and because they were welcoming athletes with disability, they had to invest in public transport, and which really was not adequate for persons with disabilities. And so they had to do that. But this is great because when the game is over, well, the public transport remains friendly. So I think those are the different legacies that stay after the games.
Yeah, for sure. And so what is it like to be a mom who has a difference raising a son? Meanwhile, I'm an only child, so I know what it's like to be in Elliot's shoes. So what is it like to be a mom with a difference? I don't know how old Elliot is now, but I'm sure there were a little bit of, some questions as to, what happened to you, as he's been growing up. And so what has been the experience like? It's obviously very unique.
It's been great. My son Elliot is now 7. Okay. And so, of course, kids are so resilient. And I think it's only this year with school, in fact, that he started asking questions because he was like, okay, what you're different and what happened to you and this and this. But before that, he was just going with it, and it was not the problem. It's still not a problem, but the questions are there. So it's been interesting. But I think what's been more interesting for him is that this year he's finding out that his mom is a medalist, because the friends and the parents and then sometimes the parents will show videos to the kids, and then the kids talk to Elliot. Oh, I saw, and so now he's kind of is very proud. He's bragging a little bit. So I'm hoping this will pass. I think it will. But motherhood and has been it's been fun. I quite enjoy it, and I decided to become a mom when I retired from sports. So I was already in my 40s, and so I really feel privileged, and it's been just great. And to be honest, I was not really worried because I had so many friends already from the Paralympic community. And the Paralympic community, who were parents. And so when I decided to become a mom, I had seen it before, that, how you do it and how you adapt and how you cope with your difference and how you make it work. So it went pretty smoothly.
No, that's wonderful. So Elliot's been asking like a lot of questions and so forth, but, has he's recognized like who you are, like, as a person. And so how does that make you feel? I mean, you're a very prominent person. I mean, you probably go walking down the street and they're like, hi, how are you? Like, So, what is that like? I mean, you're basically a celebrity, quote unquote, in Canada. So, being senator and all of that. So,
it's interesting. I mean, I think for Elliot, it's just the way it is. If we go out, of course, there will be some people speaking to me or asking questions or just congratulating me. And at first, he didn't quite understand why they were talking to me when he was 4 or 5. Now he knows that it's because I was on TV and I was racing and that kind of thing. So, but for him, it's just, and it's not that bad. I think in Canada, people are very respectful of boundaries. So it's not like I'm having people following me. And plus, it's been a long time I retired. So it's just nice. It's just nice, really, to have some that kind of recognition. And Elliot, I think he's been kids. They adapt, and he likes it. He thinks it's funny, or if someone congratulates me, he says, "Oh, this is my mom." Like, he's just like, he's playing a little part. And so I'm hoping, what I'm hoping though, is that he can, be not inspired, but, that he will see the value of having big dreams, that I can pass that to him, that nothing is too big, nothing is, you need to chase those dreams. You can do whatever you want. So I'm hoping that I can pass that to him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you will. So if you could ask, we just have 2 more questions, but if you could ask, this is a fun question, but if you could ask an assistive technology manufacturer to create some type of like dream product, what would it be? It's interesting.
It is interesting. It's interesting because every time I see they're doing a lot of development with robots, robot legs and these.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And I look at that and I'm like, oh my God, it looks like hard work. And I really fail to see the advantage of standing up, but not really being all that mobile. So I don't think I would go there. But I think being a wheelchair user, of course, you just want the lightest and the most mobile and lightest wheelchair. So that's one thing. But I think the key is more about thinking. We're talking a lot now with this pandemic about building back better. And I think if we build back better for everybody, then we don't need the specifics. If we think about who needs what when we build it, then your difference really does not have an impact on your daily life. And that really is the goal, because, being with a disability is one thing, but if you take away those barriers, whether they are physical or whether they are also in people's mind, well, then it doesn't really matter, right? So I think this is where I would put my research and development is making sure that we build those cities, that we build every places that has access for everybody, so that the difference are just, they don't have an impact on your daily enjoyment of life.
Amen to that. I totally agree. So can you leave us, this is just the last question, with some words of wisdom or advice to others who have a spinal cord injury or any type of difference, looking for inspiration?
Oh, I'm always hesitant to give some advice because I think we're all so different. I would say that one of the things that I've changed in I've been a person in a wheelchair with a difference for decades now. And I don't have regrets, but when I think back, I think that sometimes I did not push enough for my rights. I compromised a lot, I whether it's small businesses, restaurants, and just adapting, because we adapt. when you're with the difference, you learn to be resilient and you adapt. And now that I'm older, and maybe because I'm more in a political aspect of things, I've become a lot more non-compromising. Sometimes I've said, of course not if it's a nonprofit and they have 2 stairs, but sometimes you've got big events and they will say, there's a few stairs, but we'll help you. No, if you can't make it happen for me, I don't have time for you. Mm-hmm. So I've been a lot more non-compromising, and maybe this is my advice, is that maybe this is how we can change the world. Just the other day, a few months ago, actually, I changed hairdresser because for years, the place was not fully accessible, but I like the person and they're so nice and they're helping me out. Oh, we'll help you. And then I thought, no, because if I'm going to spend my money somewhere, I'm going to spend it in a place that actually, invested in a ramp so I'm doing a lot of that these days, whether it's restaurants, whether it's services, or accepting or not accepting to go somewhere. And I think this is one way that we can have an impact. And it feels good.
Yeah, sure. Well, that was a great ending. This has been wonderful, Chantal. You're a wonderful person.